So welcome to Veeva's webinar. Jointly, we're partnering with Life Sciences, one of our partners, to discuss the GDPR topic and also pharmacovigilance. So I think, first of all, I'll start with the introduction of the team. So my name is Sharmila Sabaratnam. I'm one of the senior directors within Vault Safety Strategy based in Europe. And I also have my colleagues, Tünde with me, who is our EU Data Protection Officer. So she would really speak a little bit around our company policy and position around this topic. And then, of course, my colleague, David, who is the solution consultant, he would really be walking through three main use cases with Vault Safety Database and, some of the examples around how we help our customers simplify the compliance with GDPR. And it's also my pleasure to welcome Gro Laier, who is the Principal Safety Lead at Base Life Sciences. She, of course, brings a wealth of industry experience, and so she will be speaking today as well as part of this webinar. So just in terms of the agenda that we're going to be covering, I think we'll just set the scene in the broader context around the GDPR within the life sciences sector. And then, of course, Tünde would share a little bit around what's top of mind for GDPR officers. And then I will hand over to Gro, and she will really share high-level context around some key topics for drivers and industry challenges. And then I will go into covering some of the things typically pharmacovigilance is struggling with as we are thinking about all of the safety databases and other safety systems. How do we manage global operations when there are these global local nuances in terms of data and data transfer? And then finally, we'll move to David, and he would really be spending around 30 minutes or so really showing the system and different use cases around how the Vault Safety platform helps to comply against GDPR. And I think during the demo, there are a couple of points where we will take some questions, and then we will also have the last 5-10 minutes also where we can then open up the line and take questions. So what I ask from all of you is please, throughout the session, as we are sort of talking through different topics, if you can please start to add your questions to the chat, then we will actually collate and take pauses where we would actually run through the questions. And then towards the end, again, we would address any of the other topics. So I think just in terms of GDPR, probably most of you are aware, working in safety and broader within the R&D life sciences sector. I think certainly introduction of the regulation in Europe with sort of heavy penalties has been a challenge. But I think for Europe in particular, we always experience the different interpretations across each of the member states. And then, there is the whole concept around the international data transfer. So there are many, many areas where, the areas of focus in terms of accountability, data security, and various rights related to the data, where we have to make sure that the right system, processes, and governance are in place to minimize any of the risk posed by this requirement. But I think for the life sciences sector, there's quite a lot of new drivers that are impacting our ways of working in terms of drug development. I think, with pharmacovigilance, we always have quite a complex operating model globally. So we would have affiliates or business partners, health authorities, CROs, or even our own global teams where we're exchanging information. And so, the international data transfer is a big topic. I think there's still a lot of evolving themes in terms of cloud-based infrastructure and providers. EU health data, on the one hand, is really pushing more of the data sharing and use for medical use. Same with things like personalized medicine, but there's, again, quite a lot of evolving topics around consent and other sort of areas. So I think within this context, what we're going to really focus on is specifically just pharmacovigilance today. And so I'll hand over to Tünde just to share a little bit on Veeva's position. So Tünde, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Sharmila. Yeah, hi everybody. To be honest, when I received this question, the first that came into my mind is like, okay, what is Veeva's position under the GDPR? So we can say, like, as Veeva is a cloud software provider to our customers, Veeva is a data processor. And many times when I provide data privacy training to our employees, what I say is that, like, under the GDPR, the real big boss is the data controller. So in this case, our customers. So they have the most of the responsibility under the requirements of different data privacy laws. But Veeva and our mission is to support our customers and provide a product to them that they can use without any fear. So they should not have, like various doubts about using it, that whether it complies with the requirements or not. Therefore, we have our privacy team at Veeva who looks after the making sure basically that our product could be used in a compliant way. We have people globally, like, for example, our chief privacy officer, she looks after the US requirements as well, focusing on HIPAA. Most probably, most of you, you already heard about it. So also we have our data protection officer in China who looks after the requirements in China and the very recent developments. I'm responsible for the EU countries and the GDPR. So therefore, as Sharmila already mentioned, I'm really responsible for the development and making sure after Schrems 2 decision that our products could be still used by our customers globally. And also we believe really strongly that our support to customers is really, reliable. And what is our real mission is that whatever requirements our customers have, we can support them. Like you can see on the screen, we always provide supports regarding the data protection impact assessment. So as one of the requirements under the GDPR, Veeva has its own data protection impact assessment, of course, but as our customers are required to complete one, and if they are using our products, the best is if Veeva provides as much information as possible to them to how to complete that assessment. Regarding the data transfers, as most probably all you know, if there is transfer of the data outside of the EU in this scope, then companies shall complete the data transfer impact assessment. Veeva completed its own, and also we are really happy and eager to help our customers to have to complete their. Also, when they receive a data subject request from the data subject, they store their data within the Veeva software. We are really happy to have them to comply with it. These were the really basic things that came into my mind. Unfortunately, we do not have that much time to go into really deeper into these topics, but I'm really happy to answer any of your questions in a Q&A session. And yeah, I think I hand it back to the other presenters. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So if you do have any more deep dive topics, please feel free to add them into the chat box and we can take them towards the end. So now I would like to hand over to Gro, please, to share a little bit around the drivers.
Thank you. So in this part of the presentation, I'm going to focus on suspected adverse drug reactions that's been reported spontaneously by patient and healthcare professionals to marketing association holders. So what are the general data protection regulation drivers and challenges for industry? And to present the main drivers, I've actually picked a few quotes from the GDPR. According to the GDPR, personal data has to be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes And here the legitimate purpose here is to live up to the pharmacovigilance legislation. Another relevant legitimate purpose is the interest of public health. And of course, the pharmacovigilance legislation is there to serve public health. So there's no doubt that we have to collect the information about spontaneous reported adverse events. The personal data shall be adequate, relevant, and limited. So no, you're too fast, too many clicks. We are back to data minimization, sorry. So what I really want to focus on here is the quote number C, and that's called adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary. And that is that I'm coming back to. And then the last quote that I want to talk about is the F, that is that we have to state that personal data shall be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security, data integrity, and confidentiality. And of course, that's very important when we are talking about IT systems. So now I'm now for the more details with the data minimization example. And so what I really want to say here is that it's not a one time you minimize. It's actually for every work step when you process personal data. So it's a gray area where you can be more or less perfect in your data minimization. And of course, I can't tell you exactly where all inspectors are going to be happy. But if you look at it, the first example here is that you have to report single adverse event reports to authorities. And since you have to provide to the authorities all the available health data, then when you have to, according to the pharmacovigilance legislation, then you have to, then you are also allowed to in the GDPR. But when it comes to patient and reporter identifiers, there's only a few that you actually have to report to the health authorities. And that means that you have to redact them and not provide them. So I'll come back to how this is done, and David's going to show it to you how it works in Veeva. Likewise, if you think about people that working with safety surveillance, they do signal detection and risk management. There's no need for them to know the patient name or a phone number or anything. So they shouldn't have access to that information because they don't need it. In contrast, the employees who request follow-up information, so the last bullet, from patients and healthcare professionals, they have to have, of course, all the data, because when the headquarter function that maybe do not see all the patient identifiers, they think, oh, this looks like a duplicate, then they have to ask back to affiliates that they can check it. And also, of course, in order to contact the reporter, in order to get follow-up information, either from the reporter or the healthcare professional of a patient that reported the case. So now let's take a look at the flow when suspected adverse drug reactions are being reported by patients or healthcare professionals to marketing association holders. And of course, the flow depends on the company. So I'm just giving one example. There are many different examples out there. The company representative who receives the initial version of the case could be anyone working for that company. But a typical example is it would be one working within medical information of an affiliate or a partner. And this company representative that receives the case has to forward it to a company safety department in the local language that it was received in. So often it will be forwarded to the local safety department, and here they will translate it into English and forward it to headquarters. And in this typical example, a structured XML file will be generated then by headquarters and submitted to the health authorities that need this report. For instance, to the Ultravigilance database, that's the safety database from the European Medicines Agency. And here I'd like to highlight that as per 30th of June 2022, the individual case safety reports are reportable to Ultravigilance in the E2BR3 format. And this is important because according to the E2BR3 format, the patient and reporter identifiers that are not being provided to regulators, they have to be replaced with the correct null flavor. So for instance, if full name and phone number and street address is available, then the information has to be replaced with a null flavor of masked, MSK for masked. If the information is not available, then it must be clear whether the information has actually been asked for or not. And it can be done either by a null flavor of asked but unknown, or a null flavor of not asked. So these are the examples. And then if we go to the next slide, and the last slide is just a quick example of a potential data integrity and confidentiality challenge. So here I want to show you the flow, a possible flow for follow-up requests initiated by a headquarter and submitted in English to the local affiliate for the affiliate to contact the initial reporter or healthcare professional of the patient. And the process of the marketing association holder must ensure both confidentiality, but also documentation that the follow-up attempt has actually been made. Remember the old saying, if it ain't documented, it ain't done. So you can't really delete it just because you want to be very private, because you have to document that you did it. So here it's better to avoid data storage outside GXP systems. So if you have one system where you can send action items, for instance, from headquarters to affiliates, that's much better than if you have to send emails and then remember where to file them and this and that. And ideally, when you are unable to avoid emails, then at least they should be generated by a GXP system or received directly from a GXP system. So in very short, I'd say it's very nice that you can upload, of course, correspondence into your database, but it's even better if the correspondence is born in the system or even live in the system. So with that, and you're welcome to bring questions in the chat, I'll bring the word back to Sharmila.
Thank you very much, Gro. So I think just building on the context that Gro shared, so let's just look at what Vault Safety offers us as a sort of platform. So I think just to kind of share the broader overview within Veeva, the Vault Safety platform has several areas across R&D within the development cloud. So we have the clinical area, we've got quality, regulatory, and safety. And so we're really focusing on the pharmacovigilance topic. But in terms of what Tünde shared with regards to general ways of working, our policy around GDPR, that applies across the board. So then if we look at the Vault Safety Suite platform, so we do have what's called a unified safety management. So we've got the Vault Safety platform, which is the sort of single data model. And within that, we've got the 3 safety applications. So we have the Vault Safety, which is the end-to-end case processing safety database. We then have the Vault Safety Docs application, which is really something where you can manage all of the safety data content related activities. So things like you can have several use cases. One example that many customers use is for PV system master file or aggregate report management, for example, for authoring. And the final application is really the signals, and that's the quantitative signal detection and management. So what David will really be focusing on is really showing you some of the things around the safety database aspects. So this is the Vault Safety. So I think within the unified platform, one of the key things is we are kind of within safety used to having quite a complex architecture with lots of safety database signals. Maybe there are other sort of SharePoint trackers to manage global, local, the source documents, all sitting in different areas. one of the key sort of transformational elements of what Veeva offers is this unified aspect. So everything is actually on one Vault platform. And within this sort of multi-tenant environment, then what it also allows you to do is work end-to-end from, you know, your affiliates, partners, health authorities, for any of the sort of, if you think of the intake piece, and then also similarly the outbound in terms of reporting, and then all of the other activities that you would do in the middle. And so as part of managing this sort of end-to-end stakeholders, you can also pick and choose within the platform the different types of users and the data and the level of control that you would have. So this is where, as you go through the implementation, one of the things that you would think about is who are the Vault administrators or super users? So from a GDPR perspective, they're really controlling the user profile, security management, and they also have much more rights in terms of, like, for example, data deletion decisions. So David will kind of touch on that. And the other thing, again, if you think about internal and external stakeholders, your global case processing team versus maybe your French affiliate, where you only want them to see those specific local data fields. Again, it's very, very easy for you to control the local case localization aspects versus the global, and similarly you can manage the same thing if you have partners. So this is where, you know, from a application perspective, it's been designed to facilitate much easier ways of working and scalability for GDPR and other sort of data privacy requirements. So David will sort of show you some of the use cases that Gro was speaking about. I think what's also important is, you know, Veeva as a technology provider, we've designed the systems, we keep up to date in terms of, as Tünde mentioned, constantly thinking about what are the different data privacy regulations, whether it's EU GDPR or some of the other topics that are going on. And we have within those elements, making sure that the data center is located within Europe to meet the requirements. We've got all of the sort of data security backup, and she mentioned around the risk assessment, you know, making sure we've got all of the processes in place to minimize data loss. And then also all of the other things that are required under GDPR. So things like, you know, the ability to delete if required based on consent or data retention periods, all the sort of other things around data masking and anonymization. But the critical thing is system is able to have all these elements, but what makes it successful is that we also have to work with our customers to make sure that our system works with your internal business processes. So you would, of course, have your own GDPR position, your processes and governance procedures, how you work with your data protection officer, and what's the pharmacovigilance team, who is responsible in terms of sort of, you know, managing those decisions and business triggers where you might need to make certain decisions related to GDPR and the data. So this is where, you know, we would start to work with you around the different user access setups, super users, and what's in the contracts, all of those. So I think, yeah, let's take a few moments. Does anyone have any questions or any feedback on what you're seeing with the, you know, your own organizations? So there's a question from Meta. Why was the event onset date redacted?
I think it's one of the settings that we had in the background. Would need to double check to have a complete answer, but there are quite a lot of settings you can set up to decide what would be redacted and what wouldn't. So it gives you a bit more control in how much information you actually want to give away or to submit.
And Meta, it really depends, right? So the rule set is really very much dependent on the individual local country requirements. And also if you think about some of the clinical trial context as well, depending on the study blind, and there's various other things where different fields will be masked, and that really is driven by your own sort of internal business processes and decisions. There is also a question from Roshan. Does SIOMS print out null flavor or asterisks?
So SIOMS prints asterisks, and the E2B files, they print the null flavors. So the E2B file would have the MSK, for example, if it's masked, or the other ones, ASKU, if it was asked but unknown, etc.
All right, thank you, David. So any other questions from the group?
David, I think I could just add that if it's an E2BR2 file, for instance, for the FDA, then it will have the privacy word instead. So everything is correct. And also, of course, you can choose whether you want to mask the date of birth or not. That would depend on the company.
Thanks, Gro. So we have another question from Marcus Drum. You showed us a situation where medical information and safety work in a common system, both Veeva-based. Would Vault Safety also interface with other existing medical information systems? So Marcus' answer is yes. So just like any other standard integration, the Vault Safety as a safety database can has the ability to be integrated with the other external systems.
Yeah, maybe just to add, so Vault platform has the REST API. So REST is the latest standards in IT technology. So our side of the tunnel is open, as long as the other side is open as well. So that can be integrated quite, it's a common practice.
But you could also add that you can, of course, upload any E2B R2 or R3 file. Doesn't matter who generated, could be a partner or another system.
Correct. The source does not matter. It can be handwritten notes, it can be E2B files, it can be PDF forms. Vault accepts it all.
Okay. With any other questions from the team or Tünde, anything else you wanted to add or Gro?
Unless the audience have any questions, I'm really happy to answer.
This follow-up question, handwritten notes, do you have OCR included?
Yes, so any document that is uploaded into Vault, not just Vault Safety, but Vault in general, is OCR'd. So a PDF rendition is created. So you can see that on the screen, and it's OCR'd as well.
Okay, so I think, we have a few more minutes. So unless the participants have any more questions, I know, that we can certainly go into many, many use cases and show you various things. We can actually wrap up here, but just before we do so, first of all, thank you all very much for joining today and for your participation. We also have the Veeva R&D and Quality Summit coming up on 8th of June in Zurich, where we would have various customers presenting their Vault Safety journey and how they're using the system in different contexts. So the details are here. So do let us know. It would be great to see you there. So please feel free to reach out if you need further information around the event and registration details. We will also share further events, similar events that we will be hosting. So thank you all very much for your participation today.